Welcome back to Afternoon Express. Now we are back about to put a sweet touch to a very delicious cook-along. Now, Chef Aisha, it's been such a pleasure just talking through every recipe with you from start to finish. Now we're about to create a sago pudding.
Yes.
Why, before we get into the recipe, why did you choose this honest day like today and as we celebrate Human Rights Week?
I think, well, when the brief was, for us to create something South African, and I thought, we're so tired of the same, the malva pudding, the maltod. I think something that we don't really talk about a lot is sago pudding.
I love
it's,
that.
It's a nice alternative as a dessert. It's a strange dessert, but it's a tasty one.
I'm here for it. Now, Mzansi, one of the most iconic, nostalgic and comfort in a bowl sweet recipes for these gloomy cold days has to be a sago pudding. Made with just a few ingredients, this pudding comes together in almost no time and hits that sweet spot. I'm here for it and I'm ready to cook, girl. So what do we need to create?
So the first thing you need to do before you... It's the sago pudding. It's the most important ingredient.
Sorry, Aisha, before you get into it, let's move that that bowl, that blue bowl, so South Africa can see the ingredients all lined up nicely in front of you.
Okay, there we go. So we've got sago. I've got about 1 cup of dried sago, and the recipe requires 1 liter of milk. So what I did was we just soaked about half of the milk, or just enough milk that it covers the sago, and you've got to leave it, ideally for 2 hours or overnight if you've got the time. It's one of those things that you could do and then just leave it in the fridge, and then we're going to want it to look like this, so it looks almost cloudy. And then once it gets to the heat, it will cook, it become transparent, like little jellies that will be inside your mouth.
Love it.
Yum.
And that's that textures that I just don't understand sometimes. I'm like, what? But I like it.
But you don't quite understand what's going on inside your mouth. Sago pudding is one of those things.
I love that. I mean, Mzansi, sago pudding is made with sago, or alternatively, it's also known as tapioca.
Tapioca. Oh, tapioca.
Tapioca, girl. Okay, I love that. Listen, you don't have to pronounce it the same, but just as long as you know what it is here. And when you do call it an alternative name, why do people refer to it as tapioca or sago? Sago.
I think I could be very wrong, and I'm probably going to get a lot of flack for this, but if I'm not mistaken, I think it might actually be 2 different things.
Okay.
So tapioca pearls are a lot bigger than sago, and at the moment, all the rage is tapioca, because I don't know if you know the tea drink boba. I think that's what it's called. So yeah, in the tea drinks, that's what they use tapioca for.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And sago is so versatile because it's also used as a thickener for pies. I know my mom uses it.
Steak pie.
Steak pies and mince pies.
Obviously.
So it's a natural thickener as well. So instead of flour, you could use sago.
I love that. Exactly. Oh, I'm loving the different uses here. It's truly broadening my knowledge of it. And then you're going in here with your clover milk. And this is essentially...
This is 2 cups of 500 ml, so it's 2 cups of milk. We're just going to let that heat, and then what we are going to do is be adding the sago that we've soaked into the milk. Once it's heated up a little bit, we're going to be adding nice flavors of cinnamon, so it's nice and warm. It makes it very good, especially with Easter or any kind of a winter dessert. It makes a good dessert, and some sugar for that sweetness.
Here for it.
Yeah.
Chef Mo, on your side, how's it going, girl?
So on my side, because the recipe requires 5 egg yolks, and what we like to do with our recipes, this is such an iconic recipe, is that you don't waste the egg whites.
Yes.
So we're going to whisk the egg whites until they're white and a little foamy and peaky, while the egg yolks go into that mixture to sort of bind it.
Yeah, and make it a custard. That's what we're doing. Yeah, we're making a custard, yes.
Yeah.
So we're just waiting for that.
It's almost like similar to a rice pudding.
It's exactly that.
Yeah.
It's basically, it's essentially it is the same thing, and we're just substituting rice. We are using sago instead then. Yeah. So we're just going to avoid the splashback.
So then if everyone is wondering what I'm up to, all I'm doing is just chopping up the fresh elements of this delicious pudding. We decided on berries because, I'm a fan of berries. So we've got raspberries and strawberries here. Super simple. I mean, there's nothing that goes into just chopping these up. Truly a brainless activity for the talker in the kitchen. And I'm here for it. I'm here for it. I'm here for it. I'm here for the jokes, honey, not for the skill of whipping it up like them.
Yes.
So how's it going on that side on the pot, Aisha?
So the way I also just separated my eggs, I use my hands, because what often happens to me is when you use the eggshells, you pierce the yolks.
Yeah, that always happens.
That has happened to lots of people. And so I use my hands.
That's what I do as well. And also just talking about the yolk, you cannot have a speck of yolk at all when it comes to the egg whites, because that, if it has any trace of fat, and that's the one thing, egg whites, they're very finicky and they cannot at all have any traces of fat. So a good thing that I do is if you've got lemon or vinegar, is just dab it on a cloth or a paper towel and just wipe down the equipment that you're going to be using. So whether it's your bowl and then your mixer, and then also to be sure to never ever use a plastic bowl when you are making any sort of egg white mixture, whether it's a meringue or whatever. I mean, because it's not going to work, it's not going to whip up.
And that's the same theory, I think, for if you're whipping cream as well, because that has happened to me so many times. But then I've also used a fork to whip cream in a plastic bowl. It didn't quite work out. I was still practicing my cooking skills back in the day. So
trying to find an alternative.
Okay, lovely.
And then the idea for these egg whites is that you don't want it too stiff, right?
Yeah. So you just want, we're not going to call it stiff. It's not going to be a stiff peak as you normally would say for a meringue because it doesn't have any stabler inside it. There's no sugar. It's just plain egg whites that we're whipping up. So it'll be a nice foamy texture that we are going to fold into the pudding as a last step because that will give it that nice creamy, that nice aerated texture.
Wow. So it seems like the way you ladies describe the sago pudding, there seems to be quite a lot of technique needed in it.
Yeah. So we can see now, if I can just get a spoon, we can look at that. The changing of the tapioca, because you can put it in my head now. The sago, where you can see it's starting to become a little transparent. So you can see this little white, the specks of it, that was what it looked like before. And now it is almost done.
And when do you add your spices?
So I've already added the cinnamon to the milk because you want that to infuse the flavors of the milk. So we've done that, and now it'd actually be a very good time to add vanilla. So I've got about a tablespoon of vanilla. We can use... thank you. We can use vanilla essence, but why I like using a vanilla paste, especially for something like this, you can see the little flecks from the vanilla pod. Because it's a white dessert, essentially. Let's put that
Any
there.
bit of colour.
Any bit of colour, yes. So the little flecks, we're just going to make sure, because vanilla is very expensive. We want to use absolutely everything. Just clean that teaspoon over there. And you'll be able to see once it starts to break down and get into the milk, the little nice little flecks of black. And that's what I look for when it's a vanilla dessert. I always look for that little flecks because I want to know that if you're telling me it's vanilla, there better be real vanilla in there.
Absolutely. And honey, as you are talking about the different flavors that we can find in the dish, I mean, you can add your favorite flavors to this, like cardamom, vanilla, like we're doing today, jam, or even a touch of citrus. I'm here for that.
I was just about to say, if you just take your hand, pop it in the milk while the milk is heating, you get an amazing citrus flavor to that, and that would be so tasty.
Now, Chef Aisha, have you already added all those other little
touches? We're going to do that now. Just give me a second. So that's exactly, I was waiting for this to happen. So we're just going to turn that down a little bit, and now we are going to pop the butter in there.
Now, Chef Mo, I love the fact that we're taking the easy way out that side. Because, honey, that you always have me whipping my peak stiff and make me work out here in the kitchen. So I love the fact that now you're making your life easier, but I'm here for it, Queen.
So be careful. Now we want to work fast because we don't want our eggs to scramble. There is nothing worse than tasting scrambled eggs in your dessert. And automatically the color has changed. So it's now a nice, rich, golden color. So I think I've broken up the egg, perfectly, just enough. We'll turn it back to there, and then we just got to keep slowly stirring that until it becomes nice
and it's off the heat,
and it's off the heat. So I've taken it off the heat to add the milk because, the egg yolks. Very quickly that can go from a good dessert to a bad dessert in seconds. So we've taken it off the heat. Mix that in.
And we saw that split second when she took it off the heat.
Exactly.
It's really, timing is really important.
When it comes to these
I'm also learning, because my aunt is the master of making this pudding. She's never shared the recipe with me, thanks aunt. So I'm learning also how to make this from scratch.
So we've just gone and added now about a teaspoon, just a pinch of nutmeg, and then a couple of spoons of sugar for sweetness, because it's a dessert, you need to have sweetness. So now what we're doing is we can actually put the heat back on. There we go.
That egg is now
egg is cooked out. So now all we want is for this to turn. We can actually switch back to the spatula into a nice, thick, luscious, creamy, and it's already happening. So quick.
Now, for yourself, Chef, when you do think of sago pudding, earlier you were saying that it just makes you a little bit more reminiscent of everything we stand for here in our Rainbow Nation. So if you were to add a little bit more South African flavors and textures and tastes, how could you do that? Or if someone wants to omit something and take it out, how then can they do it with not compromising too much?
I know a lot of people, a lot of South Africans add to their sago pudding custard powder. So you could add just a tablespoon or two of the custard powder when you're doing this, and obviously you're going to get more of a custardy texture. You're going to get a slightly thicker texture, and once that's done, is also get baked. So that's another version of this, where you take this and it'll be in this texture that it is into a baking dish, and you pop it in the oven and you bake, and it's like a pudding. You get a nice little eggy crust on top, not eggy in that sense, but a good eggy crust, and you can dust it with cinnamon, and it comes. Oh, it's.
And I
just one of
suppose
those
that also
things.
just depends on how you prefer the texture of your sago pudding, because I can imagine the different ways of preparing it.
Yes.
Also, then it just naturally would come out differently.
Obviously. So we have got a very good texture over here. The pearls have gone nice and clear. One thing to remember with sago is once you've taken it off heat and it stands, it's going to get thick. And things are going to happen. So if it comes out when it's done and you come back in an hour's time and you're like, well, that does not look like the way I left it, don't be scared. What you can always do is just add a little bit of milk again back on the heat, add a little bit of milk to start thinning that out. Smell.
Girl, that smells delicious.
Yes.
That really does smell like home.
Yeah.
It does. And so all we're waiting now is for Mo and her egg whites.
Should I take it a bit further?
Yeah, we can take it just a smidge and further.
Yeah,
than
because
that. And then I'm going to, while I'm waiting for you, maybe put this back on a very, very low heat.
Yeah.
And just give that a good stir, because the longer we stir it, the more we leave it on the heat, the thicker it's going to get.
Okay.
So this also helps to lighten it up a little bit.
Yes, so it's not going to have that overly heavy, weighed down texture that desserts with cream usually have. So that's going to lighten that up amazing.
I love that. Chef, I'm going to have to ask you to just show us then how we can transfer it from the pot to the end finished dish. I've got my strawberries already here.
Okay, cool. Let's do that.
Chef Mo seems like she's quite well on
she's
her
done.
way.
Oh,
so let's put that together just in the last finishing few seconds.
So we're just going to very quickly pop that egg, and you can see there's look at that, and just give it a nice stir to incorporate that.
Like a folding action.
A folding action, and at least at this point we don't have to worry about possibly deflating the egg whites. It's okay. It's a cooked dessert. So we're just going to do round and then cut through.
I mean, that is such a healthy portion. I can imagine the entire family at the end of dinner just diving in there to enjoy this delicious treat. I'm loving it, ladies. As we put the finishing touches on it, to get this delicious sweet treat recipe, please do head over to afternoonexpress.co.za. Here are some berries, ladies, and let's put the finishing touches on that.
Just gonna get that going. Oh, that's hot. Let's do.
See you after break, Mzansi, as we sit around our table to enjoy dinner.